stories are meant to connect. It's all about driving like those human connections, and connections come from shared experiences. And with 8 billion people in the world, the chances of like almost anything that you've been through being like completely unique to you is so low. Like someone has been through something similar. So having a story that's relatable, that other people can feel like they have, like they're seen when they hear your story, is so important. Having it be emotional, and it doesn't have to mean like it's traumatic emotional. Like humor works. Like if you're telling it in a way that conveys any emotion, whichever emotion that it is, it just has to have something, because that your audience is going to feel that emotion. So even if it's just you want them to laugh, they're going to feel that. If it's heart-wrenching, they're going to feel that if you tell it the right way.
Yeah.
But the most important one is that it has to be unexpected.
Welcome everybody back to another exciting show of the About That Water podcast, where we help you build strong financial habits so that you can live the life that you want to do. But today, I have an awesome guest who I've met at FinCon, my first FinCon, and she's been amazing. If you have my business cards, more than likely she designed it. So I want to bring up to the stage and to the whole community is Sara. How you doing, Sarah?
Hi, I'm so good to happy to be here. How are you?
I'm doing amazing. It's been a while since we've hung out. I would say just a few months ago.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, we've been partying it up. So what's your latest drink that you've been playing around with lately?
So my latest drink?
Yeah.
Oh, so I live in Austin, and some of the like beer bars, they have like mead. So it's like, I think it's like kind of beer brewed from honey.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't like beer, but mead is so good. It just tastes like juice. It's dangerous.
Ooh.
Yeah. I think it's like Meridian Hive is like the brewery for it. Dude, it's so good.
Then I'm gonna have to try that one. Because I usually go to the bar and I usually get I call it adult apple juice. So it's I usually get any apple juice, like a cider or something like that.
See, I love a cider. And if I'm feeling like really wild, I'll do like the Angry Balls. It's like Angry Orchard with Fireball. Because then it tastes like apple pie. That was like my college go-to.
Okay. I'm gonna have to try that one. I've never heard of that before. So
it's been a bit, but that was my college go-to.
Right. Well, talking about your college thing, I mean, you talk about your story a lot, but I don't think anybody in my audience have heard your story.
It's probably a good thing.
Well, I mean, we can start it off. I'm gonna just start it off. I'm gonna just throw it out there. You had a penis tattoo. Okay. And I was
Don't bury the lead.
What? Just go right into it. How in the world did that? And it's not by mistake either. Like, you had to feel it.
Okay. It wasn't on purpose that it looked like a penis. That part wasn't I got the tattoo on purpose.
Okay.
It just wasn't supposed to look like that.
Oh. What it was supposed to look like?
An airplane.
Oh. Okay.
All right, let's back up.
Okay.
When I was like 22, I took a solo trip to Ireland.
Mm-hmm.
And on the final day, after a 12-hour bar crawl through Dublin, as one does, with a bunch of strangers, because I was there by myself, two of us wanted tattoos as like a souvenir that we wouldn't have to get through TSA. And I asked for an airplane, just like as a reminder to always find the next adventure. And I don't know if the guy misheard me or what, but it was an airplane, but the engine that comes off of it looked very phallic. Very.
Wow.
And the fact that this is the story that I'm known for.
Yes.
I am clearly the consummate professional.
But this is one of the things that I have gathered from you over the multiple occasions that we bumped into each other, is that, you're energy shows that generic is boring.
Oh, so boring.
And it's like you've really have taken things out of perspective and really bring it to light and just bring the realism to everything. And I greatly appreciate that you do that.
And I don't do it on purpose. I never planned on anybody. My parents didn't know the story until they heard it on the podcast. I never planned on
Wow.
people knowing this story. I was at Podcast Movement in 2021, I think,
Mhm.
in Nashville. And I was the director of marketing for a financial advising firm at the time. The CEO hosted a podcast that I produced. And I wanted to get him on Stacking Benjamins, which is like one of the top finance podcasts ever. It's an amazing show. And I stalked Joe Saul-Sehy for 3 days. And I don't mean like, I just hoped I bumped. No, I hid behind a book at a cocktail table. It was John Lee Dumas's book, the signed copy he had given me. I
Mhm.
hid behind it. I might as well have had like a newspaper with the eyes cut out. Like it was that level. And finally, after 3 days, I pass him in the hallway and I just yell at him on accident because I was having an out of body experience. And I was like, I need to get my host on your show or I'll be fired. And he's like, we can't let that happen. And so we met the next day for coffee so he could tell me like how to get like Eric on the show.
Mhm.
And I give him my whole spiel of like, he's got all of these designations. He's an expert in this and that. And he's just like, yeah, that's great. But I don't need an expert. I need someone with a cool story.
Nice.
And that is when everything went off the rails because I said, do you want to hear about the time I got a tattoo of a penis while I was in Ireland? And he did. So I accidentally got booked on one of the biggest finance podcasts in the world to talk about the world's most embarrassing tattoo. And from that day on, I have been the girl with the penis tattoo. But it was funny because he then had to figure out like how can we take this story and relate it in any way to like money because that's his job. Like he
Yeah.
hosts a finance show. But he just wanted the story on his show.
Mhm.
So he like walked me through how to tell this story on his show, just like through like not like ahead of time. It was just in the interview.
Oh,
Just the
good.
way that he interviewed me to tell this story
Mhm.
made it actually a valuable story. Like there were lessons and like financial lessons and self-discovery and like all of this stuff that made it an actually valuable story that people could take something away from,
Mhm.
which I never thought it would be.
Yeah.
And it changed the way that I told stories from that day on. Like everything changed in the way that I presented information. Like everything became a story. Every story has value. You just have to know how to tell it.
Yeah. And because one of the things that as a podcaster yourself and coming from the production side and doing the marketing and everything like that, what type of stories have you heard that's been the most impactful? Like the style of story?
That's a really great question. So I I have a book.
Yeah.
And I actually list out all these different types of stories, like all the different stories that we tell. And I think that the most impactful ones, it's called like a transparent recount story.
Hmm.
And these are the ones that it's like everyone, when they tell their story, they tell the highlight reel. And it's like, I accomplished this and this is how, and things like that. The transparent recount is not that. It is the blooper reel.
Hmm.
It's the like, this is what I messed up so royally, and this is what I learned from it. And I think those are really the best kind of stories because, like, you can learn from success, but you learn so much more from failure.
Oh, yes.
Like, all you learn from success is how to do something right. But from failure, you learn like 500 ways to do something wrong.
Definitely. Because for those of you who are listening, um, my business card, this is how Sarah and I met. My business cards, I was so excited about my little business cards I
I
had.
still feel bad. I mean, I made up for it, but
You did.
I was so mean.
But it helped out a lot because for one, I was doing it on my own and it got me to understand that done is better than perfect.
Perfect. Yeah.
And one of the things that I had, I don't know if I still got my old business
For
cards.
context, the first time we
Yes.
met, he handed me his business card and I looked at it. I'm like, this is not good.
Yes.
And
So
then I went home and redid it.
yeah, so these are my two business cards. So this is the one on my left hand is the old white one, and it has a front and back of just my logo and my QR code. And then she decided to make this one, which is I appreciate, which is now like it has some two tones. It got front and back for us. Like she's like, you have wasted dead space. You're doing this wrong. You need this way. I was like, I felt so hurt throughout the rest of the rest of
I'm
FinCon.
sorry.
But I appreciated the feedback because one of the things that you told me, well, one of the things I noticed about when it comes to business cards is that it has so much value and helps you to be remembered. And if it's not done right, it can really like deter people from even going further into your brand.
Yeah, I host a podcast about personal branding called Branded, and we've had I know we've had one full episode about business cards, but we've talked about business cards in several episodes because they really are like just a tangible representation of your brand. And it's such a little amount of space that has such a big job.
Yeah.
And the way that you lay it out, the information that you include on it, like everything is so important. And we learn from mistakes. My first business cards, I thought they were gorgeous. They were so pretty.
Yeah.
And I paid extra to have the like satin touch.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, like it was like it felt so nice. It was like feminine and pretty. And every time I would give it to somebody, they would want to write a little note on the card so that they would remember like why they have my card, why they want to reach out to me. And they couldn't because of the coating on it that made it soft. You can't write on them.
Wow. Didn't think about that.
Neither did I. And so where's my cards? Try to not get everything to fall on me. So when I redid them, I didn't do the soft touch. And so the front has like my information, the back has my QR code, but I even put a little like half of the back, it just says notes to remember me by.
Nice.
So that there's literally a spot for them to write their note because I just watched everyone like how many opportunities did I miss out on because they didn't remember why they wanted to reach out to me because they couldn't write it down. So now it's like I'm not taking that risk anymore. I have a notes section on my business card.
I have seen that recently when a couple of people that gave me their business cards. I know this show is about finances, but
You
it's
pay
a
for business
lifestyle
cards.
thing. Yeah, we pay for those things.
Yes, they cost money.
And it's part of advertising budget and everything like that. But a few people rarely had that space where you actually could type something in. And I'm like, where is the stuff? Like one person just had a photo in the background of like a beach ball. I'm like, who was this? Like, but he's a cool guy in person. Really nice.
So I don't. You weren't at Podfest, were you?
Podfest? No, I did not.
Okay, so me and my business partner, so we run a podcast production company called Branded, and we had a booth in the expo hall, and we are we're a creative brand, and like it's all about like big like experiential branding. So we turned our booth into a photo booth.
Nice.
And it was so much fun. But then we had a little bucket that you could put your business card in because we were doing a giveaway. And like a lot of people do those. And the amount of time it took me to then input those business cards into like a spreadsheet to do the drawing and everything and add them to a mailing list, just because I spent so much time judging the cards. So much time. Like I would just sit there and stare at it. I'm like, this one doesn't even have an email address.
They don't.
Some of them, like the type was like 5-point text. I'm like, I don't have a magnifying glass to read your business card. Like, make sure when you're designing a business card, it is in like it's to scale, so you know that you have at least like 9-point font, so it could be read. Please.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
This
I
this
mean,
this interview is making me sound like such a bully.
but
This is
they get
not a
us
good
to
look for me.
understand, like, I guess we're very picky because we look at it from a marketing standpoint and also
Hmm.
from a business. We're like the end goal. Like, what is your end goal for putting out the card in the first place? Like
Yeah.
the color scheme, does it even match your own color scheme of your website? Like, I noticed with yours is pink and white, which is what your whole brand is about, which is great.
Everything's
Um,
pink.
yes. And then it's like, how come we can't have something that's a little bit more interactive? Like I found one, I was actually thinking about doing one of these, not to advertise these people or get, in fact,
Oh,
I
is
probably
it
won't
that
do that.
like this is a URL? Yes. Okay,
Yes,
so it gives a
I
whole
love
email
those.
address and then it
Mm-hmm.
brackets out like my name, my handle, the email. Like I've seen those
Yes.
and then like the URL.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, those are cute.
I like those, but this
I
one
think those
has
are
that
good for
felt.
people that are like in like social media.
Yes.
Yeah, like that's a really good like thing for like a social media person.
So we want to go back to your book a little bit because you're talking about these stories. Um, so while you're writing this book, why did you even write the book in the first place about storytelling?
See, while I was writing it, I asked myself that a lot
Mm-hmm.
because it was a very long process. But I think a lot of it was I I learned that day in that interview with Joe how to tell my own story.
Mm-hmm.
And I basically just kind of went down a rabbit hole of I became obsessed with the idea of storytelling. And storytelling, especially like in the space that I'm in, like I coach people on how to be great podcast guests and how to tell your story. And when it comes to being a podcast guest, you have to rely on those stories, but you also have to be able to tell them well.
That's true.
So
Yeah.
the whole book is a guide to telling your story. And it's like almost a memoir because I teach it through my own stories. And it's part journal because there's writing prompts so that you can start writing your story. And I just did it because I wanted people to understand that they have a story. That was one of the biggest things that I always heard when I said, like, you need to tell stories is I don't have a story. I'm
Mm.
like, y'all, my story is about a bad tattoo. And I tell it on stages at conferences around the country. I promise you, you have a story. And there's a quote that I include in it. It was from Ira Glass. And he said, good stories happen to those who can tell them. And
Like that.
right, that's just like such a profound. I'm pretty sure he had like he was, there's a movie about him, like his fall from grace, because he was a reporter who made up all his stories. So don't take it to that point. I think that was him. It's like Shattered Glass or something. But it's just such a profound saying because if you can tell a story well, anything can become a good story.
Yeah.
Like if you look at stand-up comedians, their like best bits are always about the most mundane things
Yeah.
because they're like, I know everyone has dealt with like airline food and traffic, like all of these things that are like super boring, but they know everyone will relate to it. So if they could tell a good story about it, it's gonna work.
So, what are the top three elements to telling a good story? Because one of those things that we all need to tell a story, either A, to get promoted, to get
Mhm.
hired at a job, not just from podcasting side of the house, but if you want to even raise money for your own business,
Mhm.
you and I, we have to pitch ourselves to be speakers. Like we have to come up with a story to tell.
Yeah.
What are those three main elements that you say would make up a great story if somebody want to start like right now?
Yeah. So I think first it has to be relatable. And stories are meant to connect. It's all about driving like those human connections, and connections come from shared experiences. And with 8 billion people in the world, the chances of like almost anything that you've been through being like completely unique to you is so low. Like someone has been through something similar. So having a story that's relatable that other people can feel like they have like they're seen when they hear your story is so important. Having it be emotional, and it doesn't have to mean like it's traumatic emotional, like humor works. Like if you're telling it in a way that conveys any emotion, whichever emotion that it is, It just has to have something because that your audience is going to feel that emotion. So even if it's just you want them to laugh, they're going to feel that. If it's heart-wrenching, they're going to feel that if you tell it the right way.
Yeah.
But the most important one is that it has to be unexpected. And that's the one that can kind of feel tricky because I tell people that their story doesn't have to be big. It doesn't have to be like sensational. It doesn't have to be something that would show up on like the evening news, but it still has to be unexpected. But that still just comes down to the way that you tell it. Because you can tell a story the traditional way where you just go chronologically and here's how it started and here's how it ended. Or you can switch it up. And the way that I love to tell a story is in reverse. So it's like with the tattoo, the first thing I told him was the hook. The hook was, I got a tattoo of a penis while I was in Ireland. And then he sat me down. He's like, I want to know everything that led up to that moment.
Yes.
Everything. And there were points that I even said, like, long story short, he's like, no, I want all of the details. And so just by kind of making it backwards, it's like I bet you're wondering how I ended up here kind of storytelling.
Yes. I like those.
Yeah. So you hit them with the hook at first, and then they're like, okay, I need to know how this happened. And that will get them to pay attention to the rest of the details.
Okay. So the first thing we need to do is chronologically throw out our story just to get it out there. And then take the piece, the hook, throw that to the front. Almost like a Bond movie style setup.
Exactly. Okay, yes. And this is another thing that I learned completely from Joe Saul-Sehy High. He calls it the Bond method.
Yes.
You always start, even like not even just, this is almost different because this is just with storytelling in general, but he talks about it from interviews and from podcasts. You start in the middle of the action. You don't start with the tell us how you got to where you are and tell us about yourself. You just start with the big question. Yeah. So like you started with the let's talk about the bad tattoo.
Right.
And like that's how you should do it. You do it like if they just started a Bond movie with he gets out of bed and turns off his alarm and then checks to see if there's any evil happening in the world. Like that's not compelling. They start in a fight scene.
True. And that's why I think it's good that I waited to have you on the show because it gave me some time to build up my reps to have this conversation. Because like I'm coming up on, I guess once I clear up my backlog, I should be at almost 280 episodes. So
that's amazing.
Yeah. I think when we met, I only had like maybe 100.
You were, yeah, I know it was relatively new, but not like new. Mm-hmm. So that was 2 years ago.
Yeah. I've been rolling.
Yeah. You go.
And coming through to understand like how interviews are like set up and done, it changes the way how I communicate completely. Mm-hmm. Even though it took me over 100 episodes to finally get it right. But a lot of people don't want to put in those reps and they just want to be 100% right out the gate. And that's one of the things I like about what you're doing with the book is helping them to kind of build up those reps behind the scenes before they get shown out there. Even though we just talked about it, having it done is better than perfect. But at least you tried.
And that's the thing. It's like you have to tell your story in order to tell it right. Mm-hmm. Like you watch your audience. I mean, it's harder on podcasts because you don't see them, but if you're like speaking on a stage and you tell a story and you see people kind of fading away during parts, like you know to cut that piece out. Yeah. Or if you everyone laughed at this part, you keep that in. So it is like you need to get those reps in so that you know like everyone's story is different. It's not just like there is a formula to it, but you have to change things out to fit like what you're talking about and who you're talking to.
Yeah. So I know this is going to kind of a blend, but I want to talk about like what really separate people from like even getting started in their storytelling. Do you feel?
Rephrase that question. Sorry.
Like far as like, what do you feel is causing people not to even tell their story in the first place?
Yeah, there's a few things that I would say. One is, like I said, people think they don't have a story because we live in this 24/7 news cycle where everything has to be headline worthy. And it's those little, just everyday stories that really have that relatability. So that makes them like, those are the good, valuable stories. So that's one. One is just imposter syndrome. And that is, I mean, that's a whole episode of itself. And I have a whole
Yes.
chapter about it and how to like work past it. It's very much a do as I say, not as I do, because I still struggle with it every day. But
Fair enough.
it's like, why would people want to know my story? Like what makes me special that like I should be telling my story?
Yeah.
And I think if you like, everybody that's telling their story feels that same way. So if they can do it, why can't you? And I think there's this misconception about people that want to be thought leaders or want to like speak on stages or on podcasts, that people think that they believe everybody needs to hear what they're saying.
Mm.
And that's not true. It's like right now our audience isn't everybody.
Mm.
It's the people who want to hear what we're saying. And those people will find you and you'll find those people. But if you don't start talking at all, no one will ever find you.
Yeah. And that's the reason why I like the way how I have my show set up is that my show is open to everybody because everybody has a money story. But it's how do we approach the same thing? Like, oh, I've been broke before. Okay, but what was your story that got you broke? What are your lessons learned? Are you still broke? Like, what got you out of those moments? But we're going to get to you a little later in the final four, of course. And so telling that story, which goes to now talking about where you at, and I believe you call it your act 3. So this is the third segment, part of your act 3.
Yes. So I started my career in marketing and then I moved into finance and I got interviewed on a podcast called Second Act Success about moving into my second act at 24. And by the time she was ready to release my episode, I had resigned and launched my own company. So she reached out. She's like, hey, your episode's going out like next month. I'm like, awesome. I'm in act 3 now. And she just threw out the episode and we re-recorded it because it was already like, I'm moving on to something else.
Oh man, I would have been curious to see how both of them, if she could have just timed it or just threw them both out there. It's just like, hey, act 2, act 3, just to kind of see your mindset shift between the two.
I don't remember what I said the first time.
I know that's what makes it fun. So since you're in your third act, this is the third segment, which is talking about the features. So what skills or habits do you feel is going to take you to the next level?
That's such a good question. So I talk about storytelling and I talk about it from a lens of thought leadership, but it's one thing to know how to tell a story and it's another to like tell it confidently. And I still, like I said, I have imposter syndrome. I have stage fright. Like I hate public speaking, but I do it so often. So it's getting a little bit easier every time, but not a lot easier. It's taken a while. But I think if I like ever get to the point that I'm actually comfortable on stage and comfortable in my own skin, that's gonna be like the game changer. Nice. Like it's almost like once I hit that, like it's over for you people. But if that ever happens,
that's not if, it's when. Come on,
we'll see.
Let's make it happen.
I'll keep you posted.
All right. Well, I'm already subscribed to you. I'm subscribed to your newsletter. I love your newsletters, by the way. And the whole branding thing. And I love you guys' podcast. It's like the dynamic between you two is amazing.
Thanks.
So, but is there anything that you want to leave the guests before we dive into the final 4 questions?
Ooh. Just know that no matter who you are, where you're from, what you do. Now I sound like a Backstreet Boys song. It might be in sync. I don't even know. You do have a story, and your story does have value as long as you know how to tell it.
Love it. Love it. All right. You ready for the final 4?
Hit me.
All right. Number 1, what does wealth mean to you?
Ooh, this is going to be a really unoriginal answer, but wealth is freedom. And it's the freedom to do what you want and when you want to do it and not feel like you're kind of stuck.
Cool. Number 2, what was your worst money mistake?
How long do you have? um, so I feel like people don't say this one a lot, probably, but buying my house. Like I built my house I started at 25 and I was a little overdoing it, I would say. So I broke my budget by about $100,000.
Wow.
And looking back, like they were selling duplexes and but like they're selling them separately, but like for two, like they called them twin homes.
Yeah.
They were selling those and like I think it was like a fraction of the price for one. I'm looking back, I'm like, why didn't I just buy a whole set and just
Right.
rent out the other side? But it's too late. There's no going back. I do love my house, but it's it was a bit more expensive than I was supposed to be.
But you get what you want.
I I have a balcony off my bedroom and a Harry Potter themed clubhouse under my stairs. So I'm not complaining.
Not at all. That is awesome. Number 3, what is your favorite financial or non-financial book?
So it's cheating if I say my own book, but no, Steal Like an Artist by Austin Kleon. It is the 10 things nobody told you about being creative. And anybody who wants to do anything with creativity, even if you're not doing things, focus on creativity. Creativity is everywhere. But it just really will open your eyes to different ways of thinking and different ways of just being, basically, from a creative sense.
Yeah. You're the first person to come on the show to talk about that book.
Really? I literally,
Yes.
I have it right here.
Right.
And
Nice.
his other books are behind me. Another really great one is Show Your Work. And that's one of like, when you asked before, like why people don't tell their stories, like if that's you, read Show Your Work. It's all about like, if you want to, people to know what you're doing and to see what you're doing, you can't do it if you don't show what you're doing.
That's a whole show. Like,
Yeah, no. I asked him to write my forward and he said no. Okay. And I'm getting over it. It's okay. I'm obsessed with him. He's my favorite writer.
But does he know who you are though?
He knows enough to email me back saying sorry, but no. But I will be sending him a copy anyway.
Okay, nice. Number 4, what is your favorite dish to make?
So your girl can't cook. Okay. But I have been in my fudge making era.
Ooh.
And when I find out I know how to do something, it kind of becomes my entire personality. So like I always have like homemade fudge in my house now.
Nice.
Yeah.
Right. You might have to bring some on travel if they allow you through TSA, of course. But
it's a solid. So yeah, we should be good. So let me know when I'm gonna see you and I'll bring you some.
All right. Well, if you come to the next FinCon, I'll be there.
I'm on the fence, but I should be there.
Yeah. All right. Cool. Awesome. Well, the last question of the show, which is where could people find out more about you?
Find out more about me on my website, favoritedaughtermedia.com. You'll find all of my socials, my contact info, and there is a tab to find my book, which is called Open This Book, The Art of Storytelling for Aspiring Thought Leaders. And it's now available on Amazon.
Yeah. Awesome. And definitely I'll put a link to the book in the show notes so that for those of you who are listening or even watching, you can actually get a copy of it today. So, Sara, it's been amazing. Thank you so much for coming on the show, sharing your story, the tips about storytelling, and also how we can recover from our past lives to continue on and thrive. One of the things that we want to do. And definitely, I might have to bring you back on just to talk about the transition through the different jumps and your different acts, because I know it takes a while to do that.
Let me know. I'm always down to hang out with you.
Awesome. All right, everybody. Y'all be safe. Be out. Peace.